You'd be surprised how difficult this was to hold, but I'm here to bring you my March reading wrap up, what I rated them, a little bit about them, and let's get into it. Welcome back to my channel, and I'm here to bring you a March reading wrap up. I'm Katie, these are my books, and before we get started, if you haven't already, click that subscribe button to see future videos, and please, if you do like this video, please drop it a like. Now we've got all that out of the way, let me talk to you about March. The first book I want to talk about is Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. The graphic will be on the screen. I obviously picked this up on Kindle. I was so kindly gifted it for my birthday back in February, and it was the last book I had to read in the Alice Feeney backlist. That ranking is already out, so if you do want to have a look at that, go check it out. So I just also want to give homage to my new Kindle. I treated myself in March. So yeah, Beautiful Ugly. This follows a writer who basically finds out is a New York Times bestseller. He rings his wife to tell her she's not home in time. She then goes, oh wait a minute, there's somebody in the road, and she disappears. 12 months later, he is in a complete remote island and he thinks he sees his wife. So he's trying to write his second book. He hasn't been able to write since his wife went missing, and they're pushing him for a deadline. He thinks he sees his wife, and he is determined to find out if it is her, where she's been all this time, and yeah. So quite a good premise. I really enjoyed it. I did rate it 4.25 stars. I just had to check because I had forgotten. The only reason it wasn't like higher is that it had a lot of similarities to Rock Paper Scissors at the beginning, like the remote island, the location, the reason, the writer. There's a lot of things that I don't really want to go into, but yeah. But then like once you got past them similarities, it was very different from 50% on, and the ending was just wow, a bit bizarre, but I kind of liked that. I really like where Alice Feeney goes with like her books. Like not one of her endings is the same, and a lot of them I haven't actually come across before, which I really enjoyed. So it is an absolute recommend and an absolutely fantastic way to start the month. So on to my first audiobook pick now, and that is The 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston. So this basically is like a go back in time kind of romance. It follows Clementine, who is struggling after the loss of a relative, and she goes into her apartment and finds a guy in there who shouldn't be in there, and basically trying to figure out, she lives in this like dead relative's house, and basically she then discovers she's gone back 7 years, and actually her relative is still alive, and this is somebody staying there, and she really connects with this guy, and basically then the next day she goes back to normal. She has no idea what's going on, so it's like flicking between the present and 7 years ago. I did rate this 4 stars. Now I really enjoyed the love story, I really enjoyed the premise of it. It was a really easy listen. However, for me, I struggled with the time flips. You didn't actually know when she was time flipping, so there was no like at the beginning of the chapter saying 7 years ago or present. You had to figure that out for yourself, and I struggle with stuff like that personally, so it is like a personal preference reason why it wasn't any higher, but I would still recommend it nonetheless. And I did read The Dead Romantics last year and didn't enjoy it as much, so I'm glad that I enjoyed this one because it meant I give Ashley Poston another turn. But yeah, still a recommend, but a little bit confusing for me in my opinion. Next up, and continuing on with the Robert Hunter series, it was The Executioner by Chris Carter. So this is book 2 of the Robert Hunter series, and I did read The Crucifix Killer a couple of months ago, and I said I would read one of these a month throughout 2025. That went to pot in February, but that's fine. So this is book 2, and this basically follows a series of unalivings. They've all got numbers on, but they don't realise till later on, as they have got like bodies 3, 4 and 5, but not 1 and 2. So it becomes a bit of a trying to discover it. Basically, the executioner goes around killing people in their worst fear. So if your worst fear is drowning, for example, he will drown you. It's bizarre, it's gory, but it's enjoyable. I actually rated this 4.5 stars. Now, I am really enjoying this writing, and I did not think this would be my vibe at all, but absolutely love this book. Absolute recommend. The twists are phenomenal, and yeah, if you haven't looked into this series yet and you don't mind a bit of gory like writing, absolutely recommend. I would really love to know where Chris Carter actually gets his ideas from, because both the books I've read now, I have absolutely no idea where he gets his inspiration from, because I have never read anything like it. On to the book club pick now, and that is The Sirens by Amelia Hart. So I actually rated this a straight 4 stars. So this was read in 4 segments, and I did find it really intriguing and wanted to continue to read it. So this follows 2 sisters that are actually separated in time, which I didn't actually realise until like the ending when it all came together. I actually really struggled with this, and it is slight fantasy, but I just struggled. Stuff like this kind of blows my mind, and when I'm reading it and I'm tired, I'm not clearly processing it well enough. But yeah, and the ending for me was just a little bit short. It was a bit wrapped up too quickly in my opinion. But yeah, so it follows two sisters. There are a few points of view in here, primarily two sisters from the past and two sisters from the present. And basically, yeah, it follows them. I'm not going to ruin too much. It's quick and easy. The chapters are reasonably like long, you know, like they're short enough. And yeah, I did enjoy it. It was just a bit confusing for me, but I would strongly recommend Amelia Hart's writing. I absolutely adored Wayward. So honestly, I would still recommend it. It just was a little confusing for me, but if you are a fantasy girly, this will be a doddle to read. Next up was a book I took out of the library and didn't actually get a chance to read until March, and that is The Therapist by B.A. Paris. Now, I've started several backlists to an extent, so I started Lynn Painter, John Marrs and B.A. Paris, and the library have a lot of B.A. Paris in. So The Therapist follows basically a couple who move into a house, and there's a lot of discussion about them moving in there. There's a lot of secrecy. It's only when a private detective shows up at the house that she discovers that a therapist used to live in that house, and she was quite brutally murdered in her home, and her husband was blamed for it, as in the dead woman's husband. And basically the private detective is of someone, because the husband has since killed himself because, well, they assume guilt, but his sister believes not. So it's like a massive family thing, but then the owner of the house takes it upon herself to try and solve it herself. And yeah, quick and easy read. It was a 4-star rating, and I really did enjoy the book. It was quick and easy. I did flick to audio towards the end. I was listening to it and I was just struggling to get through it. I'd finished an audiobook and wasn't ready to start another one. So yeah, picked that up, flicked to audio and then flicked back, and I'm so glad I did, because the ending, I had not guessed it at all. I thought I would guess it, and I did not guess it in the slightest. B.A. Paris did a very good job of making you think it was somebody that it wasn't. That's all I'm going to say, but I would recommend it. So audiobooks were a lot slower this month. I'm very much slowing down in terms of audiobooks. It's not necessarily time, I'm just feeling like putting my music on a bit more. But the next audiobook is The Law of Attraction by Laura Carter. Now, unfortunately, I did only rate this 2 stars. I mean, it's a short book, it's like 200 pages long, and yeah, it took me a slog. I was not interested. So this follows an American guy who is doing well in life, very business oriented, comes across a British girl who is basically running away from something, and yeah, they connect, as you can imagine. It is a romance book. However, if you listen to the audio, which I think is half the rating in my opinion, he is American and doesn't sound American at all. She is British, and it really gets my goat when I watch anything American drama related, when the British person comes in speaking posh and almost a bit cockney but not. And I just think, you'll know what I mean if you've seen American dramas, but that just put me off the book. And even if I'd have flicked to physical, I could not unhear that. And I just think the narration was so poor for this that, I don't know, I feel a bit bad for the author. And, you know, the actual premise of the book is really good, but for me, the narration completely ruined the book, and I just could not get on board with it. And the guy, quite frankly, was an absolute jerk, which just put me off the book, unfortunately. Now, we're moving on to a book that's probably the longest book I've ever read, and yeah, it did not disappoint. So I read Redeeming Six. This is the 4th book in the Boys of Tomlin series, and it is part 2 to Joey and Aoife's story. Now, before I even go into this book, check your trigger warnings. This is hard hitting, to say the least. I picked this up at the worst time of my life possibly, but actually it ended up helping me, which is a bit bizarre. I was grieving, I still am grieving, and this had a lot of grief in it. If you've read the first 2, you'll probably understand why, as it is Joey's story and Aoife's story, but this is heartbreaking. It is, I was laughing out loud, there were so many emotions, and all I want to say is the next book in the series is Gibbsy, and I absolutely adore Gibbsy, so I'm really looking forward to picking up his book. But yeah, the way Chloe Walsh writes, this is 927 pages, and it did take me above a week to read, but it was worth it, and it was a 5-star rating. I can't believe I've waited that long to tell you that. This was my first 5-star of the year, and I was umming and ahhing about whether it was worth the 5-star or whether it was 4.5, but actually I realised all I ever did was think about this book. I still think about this book a week or 2 on, and I think that speaks volumes about a book. I just thought, no, I'm thinking about it too much. I constantly wanted to pick it up despite it being such a chunky book. So yeah, I'm excited to continue the series, and I did not think I would become obsessed with a romance series as much as I have, but if you haven't picked up this series, this is most definitely your sign. Next up is another audiobook pick, and that is The Vacation by John Marrs. I rated this 3 stars. I'm a little disappointed to say the least. It was still a good book, but it took me 2 weeks to listen to. I mean, it is 12 hours long, 500 pages, which I believe is quite long for a thriller. So I'm going to try and explain what it's about, but in all honesty, I hadn't a clue what was going on for the good majority of this book. So I think it was the last 15% it all came together, which actually pulled it up into the 3-star rating. This follows basically a group of people who are going about their like lives, but they're running away from either their mistakes or their past in general. But yeah, I don't really know how to explain this one. It was twisty towards the end, but most of the time I didn't know whose point of view it was, who I was like rooting for, who had done what, and yeah, unfortunately not the best one, but I would still recommend John Marrs. Maybe just, I'm not a holiday thriller girly, I've come to the conclusion. I rated The Holiday by T.M. Logan the same, and so maybe that's just telling me to just stay away from holiday thrillers, but who knows. Next up is The Crash by Freida McFadden. Now, this was an unexpected addition to my March reads. I actually came to a point where I was like, oh, I need a quick thriller after like redeeming 6. So I did pick up The Crash. I mean, I haven't read the physical copy because the sprayed edge is too beautiful to ruin. So this follows Tegan, who is involved in a car crash after she goes out in a snowstorm to see her brother. She is 8 months pregnant and discovers some quite horrible news, which sends her to go and visit her brother. And then when she crashes the car, a guy comes to save her, and basically a couple look after her. This couple is not what they seem. As you can imagine, it is a thriller. The ending had my jaw on the floor. I did not expect this to go the way it did. So yeah, it was quite the shock, quite the twist. Quick and easy read, read it within a couple of days. And yeah, just an absolute enjoyable read. And definitely one of the better ones Freida has written. She's been putting out a lot of books lately that have been subpar for me, and it's been really nice to pick up a book that I really enjoy. All her books are on Kindle Unlimited as well, so this may be your sign if you haven't picked it up to pick it up. And the next book I want to talk about is My Daughter is Missing by J.D. Kirk. Now, this is a pre-release copy, so thank you to Bookerchart. This is ad PR. This follows a woman whose daughter goes missing, apart from she can't tell the police that her daughter's gone missing because she has her own secrets. This is quick and easy. It is 316 pages, I believe, and I did read it again within a couple of days. I inhaled it. I rated it 4.5 stars. So this was such an enjoyable read. I don't really know where I was like going with this book, and it's the first by this author, but honestly, quick paced, twisty. I mean, I loved the sister in this. She is unhinged. But yeah, it was just bizarre, but I just wanted to keep reading more, and I read 2/3 of this in one sitting. So that tells you what I thought of it. I intended to have this as the last book of the month, but it just didn't go that way because I read it so quickly that I had to try and find a book that I could read within a day. So yeah, absolutely recommend. This releases on April 16th, so if you haven't tried this author, I would definitely recommend, and I definitely am going to be looking into picking up more of their books. And the last book I'm going to talk about, which isn't necessarily in my other social wrap-ups, but I did read it, and it is a novella, so I'm not really doing much about it, is Destroy Me by Tara Maffei. So I needed a book that I could pick up, and it is actually the only novella I haven't read in my bookcase, so I thought I would start by reading Destroy Me. Now, I read Shatter Me over a year ago, so I couldn't actually remember what was going on. So this is like a little side hustle of a love story, but it has made me intrigued to read the next book in the series. It is part of the Unite Me book, which is 2 novellas but that are not to be read next to each other. So I have currently left a book half read effectively, which has annoyed me. But it is a very quick review. I did enjoy it. It was a 4-star rating, but I'm not going to say much more on it because, yeah, it's just the way it is. So it was a quick and easy end to March. So that is March wrapped up for you. I think I read a total of 10 books, 11 if you include the novella, but I'm not really including that in my numbers. And they were all reasonably good books. I found my first 5-star, and yeah, I'm very much back in my thriller era. But yeah, you guys have also voted, and I will be starting the John Marrs backlist. As you can see, I've already got the one on there. I've got a couple in mind if I have time. I do have 2 weeks off in April. But yeah, that is my March reading wrap up. Let me know in the comments what you read in March, your favourite read of March, and if you've read any of the books that I've mentioned, and if you agree with my opinion. And as always, thank you for joining me, guys. And I know I've already said it once, but click that subscribe button for future videos.